Hello, I'm Wheelgun Dan. Thank you for being with me here today to discuss the subject why magazine capacity bans are unconstitutional. As always, you can visit wheelgundan.com directly for all my latest activities and offerings. So let's get into it. So, a lot of politicians you may see from time to time will try to enact what they refer to as a high capacity magazine ban. So, if you're going to have something called a high capacity magazine, which is generally, according to the politicians who try to restrict magazine capacities, they try to restrict them to, say, 10 rounds or 12 rounds, depending on where you're at. But if you're going to use a term high capacity magazine, in order to have high capacity, you have to measure it against something. What is your baseline? Manufacturers refer to the magazines that they make for different firearms as standard capacity magazines. So, depending on the firearm that you're talking about, a 30 round magazine could be considered a standard magazine for, say, an AR 15 style rifle. Perhaps in a different day and time, maybe a 20 round magazine was standard for an M16. Whereas, say, a modern day Glock, a 9mm Glock pistol, for example, a 15 round or a 17 round magazine could be a standard capacity. Well, how do you come up with a standard capacity? Well, standard capacity is basically, well, how many bullets fit in that particular gun? The bullets are a certain size and the gun is a certain size, and so how many bullets will naturally fit into that particular firearm? That then becomes a standard capacity. So standard capacity refers to how to use that firearm in a practical sense for the intent and purpose which the firearm is designed to use. So then a high capacity indicates or implies that the capacity of a particular magazine for a particular firearm exceeds that which it would be included as standard capacity. It's a little rough, but that makes sense, right? So the problem is a couple fold. The number 10 rounds or 12 rounds as being the restriction on magazine capacity for a particular firearm is, first of all, it's a completely random and randomly generated number. The other problem, I think, stems largely from a perception that has been beat into our heads by the Hollywood movie industry for a very, very long time. I think the only reason that this argument or debate has even come up, and the reason why legislators from time to time try to institute a magazine capacity ban, is based largely upon the perception that Hollywood movies for many, many decades have been portraying, where a person gets shot by a gun and that one bullet that strikes the person causes that person to then fall down immediately and die. That is a drastic departure from reality. It doesn't actually work that way. While in real life that sort of thing may have happened, it is by no means a normal occurrence in a situation where someone gets shot by a firearm. Immediate incapacitation is a very, very difficult thing to come by. If Hollywood portrayed movies accurately when someone gets shot by a firearm, it's not going to make a very interesting movie. A lot of people aren't going to want to see the reality of it, but Hollywood is under no obligation to show you an accurate representation of real events because they are in the fantasy business and the entertainment business. And in their fantasy entertainment world, a person being shot by a gun, causing them on the very first shot to fall down and immediately die, it works for their storyline and their fantasy storytelling, but it's not reality. The problem is that there's too many people have that subliminal impression in their minds, and they think that that's how guns actually work, and then these people then go on to become legislators, elected officials, politicians, and then they use that fantasy perception of firearms to then create legislation in the real world for all of us. So that's a problem. So one of the things that people argue about all the time in this debate is they say, well, why do you need so many bullets in a particular gun? So for all of those of you who are going to say you don't need a reason why to have a certain number of bullets in there, okay, we get that. But in an attempt to provide a credible argument here or credible response to everybody who does say, well, why do you need so many bullets? Let's look at a couple of real world examples here. Let's say, for instance, a person in a real world scenario is being threatened by a hostile aggressor who is intending to kill them. The reality of it is someone who is armed with a handgun, for instance, may fire a number of shots. They will miss more times than they will hit the aggressor, the bad guy, we'll call him. And then maybe a couple of those bullets will hit the bad guy, and then the bad guy runs away and winds up going to a hospital to receive medical treatment where they subsequently live and they survive the incident. Sometimes they die, sometimes they don't, but even being hit with a couple of bullets, it's quite the norm, almost, I would say, that people often survive being shot. You know, they do. A lot of people die. A lot of people survive. A surprising number of people survive. So in that situations, well, how many bullets did you need for that particular engagement to defend yourself against a particular hostile aggressor? Well, you never know ahead of time how many you're going to need. But then what if there is multiple hostile attackers at the same time? Now what? Well, the same thing then happens. So you've got multiple attackers. You're going to try to stop all these attackers from killing you. You engage each target, and each target you're going to miss a bunch of times. You might hit a couple times, and then you move on to the next attacker, or you may miss a few times and hit a couple times, and then another attacker. You got multiple attackers, okay? Now all of a sudden, you're in a situation where if you are limited to only 10 rounds in a situation like this, you are in grave danger. So this is where the unconstitutionality of magazine capacity bans has a real world effect on endangering the lives of law-abiding citizens who are simply trying to defend themselves and protect their family and things like that from hostile aggressors. Whether you are a store owner and you're trying to defend your livelihood from a group of armed aggressors who kick in the door and are threatening to kill everybody, or you're in your home and there's a home invasion and there's a whole bunch of people that storm into your house at the same time. the the Second Amendment, for example, in the United States, doesn't specify how many bullets you're allowed to have. It doesn't address that at all. It simply says that you're allowed, you have a right to keep and bear arms. That it's a pre-existing right, and so on and so forth. So, having any manner of magazine capacity ban is unconstitutional because everybody has a right to keep and bear arms. The the capacity of the magazines that are inserted into the firearms are subject to the size of the gun and how many fit into the firearm. That's basically it. Now, whether you choose to use the firearm in a lawful manner or not, that's up to the individual. But the idea of limiting capacity is not only unconstitutional, but it endangers the lives of the individuals who may need that for the defense of their lives. Now, what about rifles, for instance? It seems to me, in my assessment of things, that the AR-15 style rifle is always the subject of magazine capacity bans, where a standard capacity magazine in an AR-15 style rifle, by the way, there is no such thing as an AR-15 rifle. That model of Colt rifle disappeared long ago. There's only similes at present day. But anyway, a 30-round capacity magazine is a standard capacity magazine for an AR-15 style rifle. It's in common production. Some say it's the most common American-made firearm that there is in circulation amongst the citizens. Okay, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but I have a tendency to think so. For those who want to make the argument of why do you need 30 rounds in a magazine, and still being mindful of all those who want to say they don't need a reason, which is true, you don't need a reason why to have 30 round magazines, but let's say, for instance, you are in a part of the country where you have feral hogs, for instance. If you've ever been out in the country and I don't want to go into any graphic details, but I just believe me when I say that a pack of wild hogs against you, a feeble human being, they are a serious, incredible threat to your personal safety. They can kill you. If you've got a whole bunch of feral hogs that are causing, a threat to your personal safety and everything, or they are ravaging the land and causing, a threat to your livelihood by destroying crops and wrecking a whole bunch of stuff, you're going to need a 30-round magazine to defend yourself against multiple hostile targets. Just as if you've got a situation where many times in this country there's been looting and rioting in the streets and massive civil unrest, and the police are completely overwhelmed and incapable of providing safety to every individual person in the country equally. These are times like this where the self-defense, the responsibility for defending family and self, is with the individual. It's always that way. Everybody always has the obligation to protect themselves and their families according to the best way that they have to do so. It's never the job of the government to provide individualized protection to individuals, but the police department does provide a generalized kind of wide sweeping generalized protection by their presence, which is supposed to keep people generally well behaved. But there are times during massive civil unrest where they're certainly not capable of quelling the massive civil unrest. There's many different examples in the United States. I'm not going to go into all the different examples right at this moment, but in a situation like that, where let's say you live in a place where in close proximity to your residence, the place that you live is being threatened by massive civil unrest, how are you going to protect your family, your home, your livelihood, and all that? How are you going to defend yourself against multiple attackers all at once? You're going to need a lot more than just one 30-round magazine. You're going to need an AR-15, and you're going to need a lot of magazines, and hopefully other people in your household who also have AR-15s and 30-round magazines, so you can take turns standing watch, over a 24-hour period. Can't stay awake all day, all night. So anyway, so that's basically it in a nutshell. Firearms are portrayed in a wrongful or inaccurate manner by the Hollywood entertainment industry. Firearms have standard capacity magazines that they are designed to naturally accommodate a certain number of bullets in a particular gun. Well, how many bullets should go in the gun? Well, how many fit? Simple. Restrictions on how many bullets go in a particular gun based on some arbitrarily randomly made number by some politician, such as the number 10 or the number 12, are a direct infringement on your right to keep and bear arms, and they present a very serious, credible threat to the personal safety of the people who rely on firearms for their personal safety and protection. I'm Wheel Gun Dan. Thanks for being here with me today. Visit wheelgundan.com for all my latest activities and offerings. Glad you could be here today. Enjoy your day. Howdy. Welcome to my collection of videos. I'm Wheel Gun Dan. Glad you're here. This collection of videos is basically me talking about America, guns, and freedom. Maybe some other subjects as well. So enjoy yourself. Be sure to see all of them, and have a great day.